David Roberts, who has multiple certifications related to the court reporting field and is a member of multiple national associations, in addition to being the Director of Operations for Veritext in South Carolina. So David has been immersed in the court reporting world for his entire professional life. He has also created a company, AWR Trial Solutions, to assist lawyers with mediation and trial presentation needs, including courtroom setup and legal presentations. In addition, we have another speaker, Tom Towey, I believe I'm saying that correctly.
Perfect.
Great. We've had you before, Tom. It's great to have you back as well, I believe, as David. Tom is a Veritext Director of Sales for the South region, which includes North Carolina. He travels throughout the South educating clients and demonstrating products. So it's possible you've already met him in your office or that you may one day soon. He has over 25 years experience in the legal industry. Today, they will forecast the future of virtual legal proceedings, and I will move it over to you guys. Thank you, David and Tom.
Thanks, Allison. So we'll go ahead and share ours. Hey, Christina, how are you? Great job emceeing, by the way. I have to tell you, that was fascinating what Scott was going over just now. I only caught the last 25 minutes of it, but that was incredible.
Okay. Well, good. I'll start off. Can everyone, Dave, can you see the screen okay? We good as far as that's concerned?
I see the slide deck. I don't see it in presentation mode quite yet.
Oh, all right. Let me try to switch this around.
There you go. Perfect.
Good. We good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks everyone, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. And I apologize, my throat is just about gone. We've been sharing a cold in our house, and it made its way to me, I think, last night. Perfect timing, right in time for this CLD. But anyway, today we're going to cover at a kind of at a high level several topics related to court reporting. And I think the title is, kind of forecasting the future of court reporting, which is kind of an interesting thing to talk about. But things have really changed a lot in the last, I'd say in the last 18 months for sure with remote depositions. And we're going to share some of the just some of the things that we've learned from our clients and some of the feedback that we've received, and give you an idea of kind of where we feel like the industry is headed. We'll talk about several considerations that are tied to remote depositions. I call them the 3 S's. And then Dave's going to get into some specifics on, some of the tools that you can use to kind of help your life, help depositions run smoother and maybe make your life a little bit easier as it relates to remote depositions. We'll specifically talk about sharing exhibits, which is always a big topic with remote depositions. And then we'll also, get into just some ways that you can, some tips on how to create sync videos and a couple of other things as well. And then we'll finish up with a very high level overview of where the industry is headed. And there's a lot of changes that are going on right now with remote depositions and with the court reporting industry. And it's a good chance it's going to look very different in about the next 10 years. So we'll talk about that as well. But we'll start with remote depositions, and I wanted to kind of start by sort of taking you through a little journey of sort of how we got here. And it started, it seems like just yesterday, but not too long ago. We started seeing executive orders like this one from Alabama that gave court reporters, permission to swear in witnesses remotely. That was the initial challenge when people started going remote, because reporters, had to swear people in face to face. And we saw, here's an example of one from Alabama. We saw one from North Carolina. And actually, in a very short period of time, it seems like every state had an executive order or some kind of an administrative order that allowed court reporters to swear in witnesses. So with that became the birth of remote depositions. And then very, very quickly into the pandemic, I'd say around June or July, we started seeing a lot of articles like this where, courts are really encouraging lawyers to proceed with remote depositions. And again, we had some folks that were kind of holding off, but it picked up very quickly after that. And then also, again, remote depositions, when it first started, was something that was foreign to a lot of folks. We've had remote depositions for a while. To give you an example of how it impacted Veritext, and we'll talk about this more later, we used to average about 40 to 50 per day around the country of remote depositions. Now we're averaging around 1,500 to 2,000 a day. So it just has grown exponentially. And you can see early on, now if you search remote depositions, you get over 1 million hits. Again, a year and a half ago, you probably wouldn't have seen that at all. And so very quickly, we went from this, where everybody's in person, everybody's around a table, the attorney gives the court reporter an exhibit, they put a mark on it, they mark the exhibit, and then everybody gets a copy. Very simple. This is what everybody was used to, and this is what everybody liked. We went from that, and then it was like overnight, we went to this. And this is really where we are today, where most of the depositions that we do have a hybrid component. Initially, they were all remote, all parties were remote, but now we usually see where usually there's going to be one person that may be in person, or the attorney may be in person with the witness and everybody remote, but we see all kinds of variations of this. And along with that came this, where a lot of us now have had so many Zoom depositions. It's like, oh my gosh, another Zoom deposition. It's interesting. Again, over 2 years ago, we may have heard of Zoom. Now everybody's done thousands, it seems like, of Zoom depositions, and we all have Zoom fatigue. And there's articles like this that are coming out too that there's 5 tips on taking a deposition in a post-pandemic world, but the articles that we see talking about what the future is going to look like, they have something in common, which is they all predict that remote depositions are here to stay. We had a recent survey. Our company surveyed over 200 attorneys around the country. Findings were that 89% said that they expect at least one party in every proceeding to be remote, almost 90% to be remote. And we see that in our day-to-day, the depositions we have on a daily basis. We also had a recent attorney panel discussion. I think there's a couple of attorneys, this was at a Veritext event. We had a couple of attorneys that were from the Carolinas in this one. And the feedback that we received wholeheartedly was that the pandemic forced the legal industry to adopt technology. A lot of the panelists said that, or the attorneys said, they're never going back to all face-to-face depositions. It'll depend on the witness. We had received a lot of feedback that adjusters and clients liked being able to join a deposition remotely and to kind of listen in on what their counsel was doing on their depositions and stuff like that, which prior, if they're face-to-face, you wouldn't necessarily have a client that would travel to the deposition and kind of sit in and watch your attorneys at work. This thing about travel being approved, that comes up quite a bit. And I think one thing that's come out of this is that corporate clients have seen how efficient it is to take a deposition remotely, and they're a little hesitant to approve travel. So it's viewed as the way that they can, save money. This is an interesting statistic, is that a lot of attorneys, and again, I'm guessing a lot of you on this call as well, have gone from 1 to 2 to 3 monitors. Some have even had more than 3 monitors, which these attorneys were kind of laughing because they're like, I'm not even a technical person, and now I've got 2 monitors, and 2 monitors is kind of the standard now, it seems, for most folks. Also, the importance of training for all parties. We'll talk about that in a little while, especially the witness came up. Simplicity, we're going to talk about that in a second as well. And then we had this feedback that a lot of attorneys are going to continue to use electronic exhibits after COVID, including in face-to-face. And Dave's going to cover that later on, because again, the exhibit sharing platform that we use, it's evolved a lot since COVID, but it's something that we had prior to COVID, and it's something that was being used in face-to-face depositions. Again, it's a way to save money, and not have to copy all those exhibits and take them with you. And let me click this really quick as far as optimize. And then the other thing that came out from this was that attorneys talked about how they have to think ahead about what could possibly go wrong. They just talked about the importance of planning and preparation, even more so when you've got remote parties. And this is a video, you may have heard this before, but I don't think it gets old. This is probably the best example of when things can go wrong. There we go. This is a lawyer who is now famous, who was taking a remote deposition, and his children had gotten into the filter and
turned on in the video settings. You might want to take a look.
Can you hear me, Judge?
I can hear you. I think it's a filter.
It is, and I don't know how to remove it. I've got my assistant here. She's trying to, but I'm prepared to go forward with it.
that's funny.
That does not get old.
I know. I think the funniest part of that is, sorry about that. I think the funniest part of that is that he says he's prepared to go forward. Also, just again, another statistic for us, over 770,000 participants in our Zoom rooms between May and December of last year. That number continues continues to grow. We had 116 Zoom meeting minutes last year. Again, it's just incredible how it's just taken over our industry. And this is something that a lot of times people don't think about is the fact that we've had to, not just Veritext, but all court reporting agencies, we've had to retrain our entire workforce. Is that it's a different way to take a deposition. So, we have about 10,000 reporters that work with us nationwide. And we've had to, all the reporters have had to go through different training so they know how to take depositions remotely, being the host, sharing screen, and all those sorts of things. So that's been a lift as well. And we continue to provide training for reporters, for the videographers, for our calendar personnel, because again, things continue to evolve, and it's something that we're very focused on. And so again, it's an interesting observation of the industry because it's changed so much in the last 19 months. Good. And here's something else that's different. And this is a position that didn't even exist prior to the pandemic, but we have something called a concierge tech that's been in high demand since the pandemic, where this is a person that will attend your deposition, and some clients have someone like this on their team that they'll use, but a lot of clients do not. So we would provide basically a technical expert that's going to participate in the deposition that will handle everything. They're going to help host the meeting, manage attendees coming in and out, breakout rooms, live streaming. If you're sharing exhibits, providing technical support, all those types of things, they're going to cover. So now we'll pivot a little bit and talk about, some of the key considerations around remote depositions. The first one, I call these the 3 S's. The first S is security. We're going to go through these pretty quickly, but again, security is always important, but sometimes it's something that gets overlooked. And the reason is, when you're sharing exhibits remotely as well as in person, it's not unusual for a lot of those exhibits to be confidential information, like medical records, for example, like personal identifiable information. Sometimes it's things like patent and trademarks and things like that. Security has always been critically important to law firms. I don't know if it's a surprise, but it's the number four risk of cybersecurity is the number 4 concern for lawyers. In the practice, law firms are now the 7th highest target for cyber criminals. Very surprising. A lot of criminals view law firms as being soft targets. And then also today, and this is another one that surprises a lot of folks, is that 1 out of 4 law firms has had a data breach. And if you go on the internet and you look up law firms' data breaches, in this case, you get 61 million hits. That surprises a lot of people. It's just security has just become such a critical piece. And Dave, I was going to see if you could jump in here too, because one thing that we see more and more as a result of this trend of just a greater focus on security is client assessments. And Dave, I know you were involved in one of these recently with one of the larger firms in the Carolinas.
Yeah, it was a large firm in the Carolinas, and they're pretty much throughout the Southeast. And, when all this first happened, security was a major concern for them. And they wanted to make sure that we as a vendor, just like any other vendor, had all the protocols in place. Well, we received this Excel document here that probably had 14 different workbooks on it, hundreds of questions that our IT team had to go through and answer so that they would feel confident and their clients would feel confident with us being able to host their depositions, host their documents, things like that. So it's just become everyone has become keenly aware of security in these last couple of years, but COVID, I think, even kind of elevated that concern to the top even further.
And if you look at some of the topics there, you've got, backup policies and procedures, vulnerability and threat management. What happens if you do have a breach in your system? How do you handle that? So again, we see more and more of these client assessments, and we bid on a lot of projects as well. And it's interesting now, if we can't check the box that we're secure, we never make it to the next steps in these bid processes with corporations and large cases and government cases, things like that. So the takeaway from this is, whoever you're working with is, if you don't just ask them if they're secure, but ask for backup. So and make sure they've got information that they can share so they can tell you what they're doing to protect your data. It's really important. At a minimum, it should be HIPAA compliant, PII compliant. If your data is being stored in any kind of or your exhibits are being stored in any kind of a data center, it should be SAS 16 certified. And again, with remote depositions, we have a separate security guide that speaks just to remote depositions because they have their own, challenges or potentials for threats as well, usually around unauthorized access And again, there's a lot of different platforms that are out there, and they offer different things. And also they can be configured in different ways. And again, we use Zoom primarily, but it's configured in a way to make sure that we're maximizing security, for Zoom. And Dave, I'll ask you to kind of jump in again here, because I know this is something else that you're very familiar with, and people may have heard of Zoom bombing, whether or not that's a concern.
Yeah, and it's
Definitely
an
real.
absolute concern, and it is very real. It's one of those things that I find that people don't really realize or take seriously, that it's something to be worried about. But just like he was talking about on that last slide there are all kinds of things in place in terms of preventing unauthorized people to join your proceeding. And certainly for us in the legal space, right? This isn't a happy hour Zoom. This is a deposition. There's confidential information happening, personal information happening that we certainly wouldn't want leaked out on the internet, or somebody coming in and Zoom bombing. And these people that do this are quite grotesque. If you've got children in school during COVID and they were remote, they probably heard of Zoom bombing. I don't know about you all, but it happened to my daughter just about every day in school. So if you're hosting your own deposition, certainly you want to have a password that's at least 16 characters long, enable waiting rooms, etc. And certainly keep your Zoom updated.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, these are some of the things that you can kind of be aware of that'll make sure that you're secure. And I'm glad to say that I don't believe we've ever had a Zoom bomb, and I haven't heard of any instances yet.
We have
This
not.
This is an area that we've invested a lot in from a security standpoint, and we take that threat very, very seriously. So the second S, and this one we'll go through a lot quicker, simplicity. And again, I think it's intuitive, but we learned very, very quickly, and I think you would agree, is that attorneys just demanded that whatever technology that we're using along with remote depositions, it had to be intuitive. It had to feel kind of the same, like an in-person deposition as far as the steps that they take, but it just had to be very, very easy to use. We heard over and over again from clients that the attorneys wanted to focus on asking the questions, reading the witness. They didn't want to have to think about the technology. So simplicity is critical. And it's something that, again, whatever tool you use, it should be very simple to use. And then the last S is support. And again, something that sometimes gets overlooked, but just, make sure that you've got good support. And that support starts really when the deposition is scheduled. We're going to talk about this in just a second, but something that's unique about remote depositions is you have to make sure that all the participants are trained and they understand how the technology works. It's not you just schedule the deposition, send the invites, and everybody knows how it works. But there's a burden of making sure that everybody's training. The witness has to be trained. And so having that support before the deposition, during the deposition, everybody gets there, somebody's having a hard time logging in. Do you have a 1-800 number or somebody that can jump on really quick to get things sorted out? And then also support after the deposition to help out with whatever deliverables.
Tom and Dave, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
Somebody wants you to go back 2 slides and just talk about Zoom bombing.
Sure.
A little bit more. The other question, and I'm not sure if you're addressing this later in the presentation, is videographers. Why do we have to have videographers for remote depositions? Is there a legal reason?
Yeah. So we're going to cover the actual videographer side here in just a few minutes. So I'll wait to kind of answer that. But this goes back to preventing unauthorized access, Zoom bombings, and things like that. So I'll give you a good example. My pastor, when this whole thing first happened, he said, "This is going to be great. We'll host a Zoom for Sunday school lessons, and we'll put the link out there on the website, and we'll probably get more attendance than we've ever had, right?" And I had to tell him, no, absolutely not. You never want to put any of these links online, posted out for the public to grab. People are out there kind of scouring sites looking for things like that. They've got code written around it to find it exactly. So in legal proceedings, and I'm not sure if this is answering the question or not, but a good example here is number 3, enable the waiting room. So the court reporter acts as the host, and we are keenly aware of who's going to be in attendance of that deposition. We ask those questions in advance to find out. Now, of course, sometimes maybe somebody's sick that morning and another participant from the firm has to be there, et cetera. That's okay. But they go into a waiting room, the court reporter looks at who's there, and once everybody is there, they allow them into the room. And a lot of attorneys at first are like, "Why am I in this waiting room? I don't understand. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm in this waiting room." Well, we didn't want the witness to be sitting there with opposing counsel without the witness's attorney. I mean, that's an awkward scenario. It's awkward in person. It's even more awkward in a remote environment like Zoom. So we also, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I was going to say, we also disabled the chat feature. And the reason behind that was we did not want the witnesses to be able to privately one-to-one chat with their attorneys through the platform. So when people chat in our Zoom environment, it actually goes publicly to everybody, and it's more for the scenario of, hey, can we take a 10-minute break? What time are we doing lunch? That type of thing. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but I hope that helped a little bit.
Yeah, I was just going to add too, is once the, once all the parties are in the room, the court reporter, who's the host, will lock the meeting, and that prevents unauthorized access. And then the other point that is, Zoom, like a lot of these platforms, there's different levels of Zoom that you can purchase. And there's one that's free. If you want to get a Zoom account, open it up. I think they limit you to 30 minutes or 45 minutes or something like that. You can get a free version of Zoom. But we have the highest level of Zoom, enterprise package with Zoom, which has the most up-to-date and the most security features that are part of that, and that plays into that as well.
Yeah, we're on the Zoom Enterprise. We have a true partnership with them. It's built into our my Veritext platform and into our internal products.
Yeah. So, go back up here. So I think we got to right here. So as far as preparations for the for a remote deposition, a couple of things, and this kind of ties into security too, is all the participants. We need to have the credentials for all the participants that are going to join. That's their name and basically their email address, because that's what the court reporter is going to use to let them in the meeting, is their email and whatever name they've got. So it's not open that whoever joins, they're just going to let them in. They have to be on a list to be in the meeting. Connectivity is super important, and it's something that we encourage for folks to check before that with a test to make sure you've got enough internet speed, bandwidth to hold a Zoom meeting. Exhibits, we're going to talk about exhibits later. And then this piece about making sure that everybody on the team is trained and ready to go, another key piece of this. And then the last one, understanding where you need support. Again, most people know if you're super technical, not technical. And again, most of the proceedings that go forward, I'd say in the high 90%, is we have an attorney who's focused on the witness. And there usually is a second person that's going to be sharing the exhibits and handling that piece. It may not be a concierge tech. It could be a paralegal, it could be a legal secretary, it could be another attorney. It just depends, but they usually divide that up just to make it easier. And I'm going to, regarding preparation, this is an email. We get a ton of emails like this. Can you please arrange for exhibit share training this coming Monday? Every instance where we're going to use, where a client's going to use our exhibit sharing platform, we always want to make sure that everybody is trained. And this is something we put together not too long after remote depositions started really growing. We have a website that we created that has a lot of detail on preparing for remote deposition, a lot of information on how to prepare. And there's also a section in there that has video tutorials on different things like how to connect, how to share your screen. These are very short snippets. They're all 3 to 5 minutes long, which is perfect for attorneys. They're not very long. It can be something that you can use for the first time, or it can be a refresher if it's been a while. We also created, this is probably one of the most important things, is that we realized that very quickly that even after we had information that we provided folks, even after we did something like this, that attorneys needed a place to practice. And so we created practice rooms. We have hundreds of practice rooms. And to give you an idea, last year we had over 38,000 attorneys used our practice rooms to prepare for a deposition. So that's something we strongly encourage. Usually the practice rooms may include the witness. If it's going to be your witness, if there's certain exhibits they're going to present, they can, again, just go through kind of a mock deposition the same way you would a mock trial. Now we're going to shift to, there's a couple of different ways you can log into a session. We started off like this, and it makes a lot of sense. We started off, let's just send everybody a link. Links are great, but we realized very quickly that links can be very problematic. We'd send them out early. You send them too early, they kind of get lost. And also the fact that, I think 40% of depositions, I'm about right, Dave, about 40% of depositions get rescheduled. And every time a deposition would get rescheduled, or the time changes, even in this example, if we went from 11 to 12, you send out a new link. So you can imagine an attorney that has 5 depositions in a week, they all get rescheduled. All of a sudden the links is this massive thing to try to manage. And so we created something called permalinks. And as you can imagine from the name, it's a permanent link. So now when we send the link, even if the day and the time changes, the link stays the same. And that's helped us tremendously. And it's just simplified that process of joining a deposition, for our clients. So this is something that's really clients really have liked. And then there's another way. There's a third way, and that's if y'all probably heard of single sign-on. We have a client portal called My Veritext, and we also have an option that if you log into My Veritext, and many of you probably have a username and password for My Veritext, that we added 2 tabs to My Veritext. There's a live session tab and there's an exhibit share tab. So if you don't want to worry about any links at all, you can just log into the client portal with your username and password, and click on live session, and then it's going to show you in this box. It has all the depositions that you have scheduled with us, and you just hit join me to start the deposition. That join button lights up about 1 hour before the deposition, and you can also join exhibit share the same way. So that's something else. And again, we learned really quick that it's just a personal preference for attorneys. Some like single sign-on, some prefer, getting the link and that sort of thing. It just really depends on, what works best for them. And then you're in the Zoom session, and you can see most of you are familiar with Zoom. A couple of things to point out. You've got your mute in the video on the bottom left. You've got your share screen in the middle, and just very easy to use. Most of the times, folks will set up Zoom where you've got your witness pinned like you have here. And then you'll have, if there's just a few folks you may or may not want to be seen, but you can kind of control that view. Usually the taking attorney, defending attorney are visible, and everybody else you can kind of block out. Just this slide just shows there's just a lot of different ways that you can set up your screen. If you think of your screen as real estate, you can block it out. I've set it up a lot of different ways, depending on what your preference is. And this is just a couple of different examples. If you've got real time, you've got an exhibit sharing tool. You can kind of put all those together where they fit on your screen. And again, usually most folks will use a 2-screen view similar to this, where you'll have the witness that's right there. You can focus on the witness, and then if you're sharing exhibits, you can kind of use your second screen for that. And with that, Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you. And I know you're going to want to share your screen. I'll stop sharing.
Yeah, I would tell everybody here that critical there with the 2-screen setup. I think if you were to take one thing away from here today, I would tell you to take that with you. And again, a lot of lawyers have adapted to that as well. So let me share my screen. Number 1, I'm one of those with 3 screens, which makes it fun when you're going to do share screen. And we'll shift here and kind of talk about exhibits. That's always a big question, and I still get this question quite often. What are the ways about going about sharing exhibits and depositions, whether it's a couple documents or 55 or 100 documents that are anticipated to be marked? We still see every single day where documents are sent in a hard copy form in advance. That's okay. There are some witnesses, and you all know them, that are just not going to be very good with technology. Now, it's okay. You can send them in advance, and the lawyer can still share their screen. A lot of lawyers are familiar with that as well. The other way is actually marking the exhibits in advance and uploading them and sending them out via a secure link. What's nice about that is that all the parties have them. They may not use them all, but I would tell you, you do want to mark them in some sort of fashion. Go ahead and pre-number them, Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2, A, B, C, something, so there's some sort of organization to it, especially for the court reporter. If we receive a document, one PDF that's 300 pages, and the lawyer's going to mark 15 different things and reference by dates, it's just a lot of extra steps there. It gets pretty clunky. So I would tell you to try and break those up and pre-mark them in some sort of fashion as well. Lastly is using some sort of exhibit sharing tool, which is what I'm going to show you next here. And again, so 2 things there. We talked about general share screen, but let me actually show you exhibit share. So I'm going to open up a web browser here, and I've got my exhibit share platform. This is the actual platform. What you're seeing are my cases that I've had some involvement with on the left-hand side, and under my case folder, I've got my depositions. And so if I've got multiple depositions, they'll all live here. So here's the deposition of good old Dr. Joe Smith, okay? And what we've got here is we've got a marked exhibits folder and a firm private. So let's just say this would say McGangus-Goodlock private. My marked exhibits folder is the one folder that's shared amongst everybody in that proceeding, meaning the court reporter and opposing counsel. Now, anyone outside of McGangus-Goodlock does not even see this firm private folder at all. This is really their banker's box, their 3-ring binder that they typically would have brought to the depot. So how do I get documents in? It's just this easy. I literally grab and drag and drop, or I can select this upload button here at the top and go out to any network drive and grab. Now, what's really cool about this is that you're not limited on the number of files. You're not limited on the file size even. I've had lawyers recently, actually, they were wanting to use impeachment clips from stuff they found on the internet in a depo. So we ripped it out of YouTube, grabbed the movie file and put it right in here, and it played beautifully. So this is, again, think of it like your banker's box. One thing that's also great is that if you're one of those, let's say it's an experts depo, and I've got all my topics in here, you know, opinion 1, opinion 2, all in one folder, beautifully organized for my lawyer, and I just want to upload one time, you can do that as well. Folder structure, and it stays there for you. So this is all pre the depo. Now I always get this question, well, how soon in advance do we have to do that? You know, my lawyer sometimes doesn't deal with documents until the night before. You can do it whenever you want. As soon as you book a depo, you've got access to it. You can do it the night before, you can do it the morning of, and what's even better, let's say you forgot a document the day of the deposition, you can drag and drop right in the middle. We never turn that feature off for you. So let's now go, the witness has been sworn, and I probably likely want to mark my first document, which is going to be this notice of deposition. And I go over here to the bottom right, you see introduce exhibit. Now we put that in the bottom right corner there for memory recall, okay? So that they don't have to really think about it. They go to that one spot, there it is. Now the first version of Exhibit Share just basically had a numbering tool, and you hit add stamp, and that was it. But over the past year, we've had a lot of input from lawyers, and they said, listen, we want to be able to put a prefix on here, maybe defendant or plaintiff on, and I want my witness name in, and I want to display the date. You do all that one time, and you're done. Okay, so I usually tell lawyers, mark your notice right before the depo is about to start, and then the rest of the time, you're just going to hit add stamp and introduce exhibit. Now, what's nice about this is that if there's a Bates number, or if this is covering up some sort of content, I can move that around. I can make this the world's largest exhibit sticker, or I can kind of partition it there. And then I just introduce my exhibit. Now, what's happening here, and this is the typical language that's said, is counsel, I've now marked and published exhibit number 1. Please access your marked exhibits folder. And now we see over here in my marked exhibits folder, there's the document. So as opposed to a screen share, which is what I'm doing right now, where I'm controlling what you can see out of this 12-page document, everyone now owns the document. So the other lawyers, the witness can be looking on their own several pages forward, but it's just like in the normal deposition, kind of like that little graphic that Tom had where the court reporter puts a sticker on and copies are sent out. It's exactly that same thing, except for we're doing that in a digital world. Now, of course, a lot of lawyers who are very techie, or they do want to control or guide the witness, will then go into a screen share and say, you know, Dr. Smith, I want you to take a look at paragraph number 2 that starts with the examination here. I could even throw an arrow on there if I wanted to kind of indicate where we're going with that. And then I can clear those off as well. So you do have that ability. I like that. I like that combination because now the lawyers have their own copy, but now controlling the witness kind of helps the speed of the process go a little bit more quicker there as well. So again, very simple. And it's just one way to go about sharing exhibits. We see this in the larger cases, something maybe where you got more than 10 documents, and certainly allows for ease. Did I miss anything there, Tom?
No, I think you got it.
Okay. Next, I'll move over to what is called advanced case exhibits. Okay, and I'm going to show you one of those as well, but I'll start with this slide. This is after the depo. Now, technically, this could be posted in your private folder as well and could be shared. But advanced case exhibits is the digital binder. Okay, you all know as well as I do, especially in a larger case, you spend so much time making multiple copies of documents that may or may not be even used, right? I used to do a lot of construction litigation as a court reporter, and I was the one charged with bringing the boxes of those documents. And you know how that is, schlepping boxes through airports, through garages, they always fall. It's painful at times, right? And I wish I would have had something like this back then. But essentially what it is an actual standalone PDF document that holds every single exhibit. Notice here, it's got the name of the witness, it's got the case name, it's got the date, and then it's got each one of the 7 exhibits marked for Gilbert Smith along with the description. So here's an actual real one from a construction case that I had. And again, if it's all my exhibits thus far taken in the case, and if I want to go and take a look at an email correspondence, I simply select the document. There it is. This is all searchable as well too. So the lawyer says, hey, listen, can you get me all the exhibits in the XYZ case and upload them for me? Well, you'd have to create a share file, dump them in there. And that's not a lengthy process. But again, I'm all about time management because time is the enemy. You literally could upload this one file and you're done. And notice here on the side, on my attachments, there are all those documents. So while this is only a 3-page document, truly this is more like 800 to 900 pages of documents. Okay. So again, trying to think futuristically on what's better practices for document management for depositions. Again, I think that that's a great solution. There's no reason to go about killing all these trees and just taking all that time to do all of this. Okay. So somebody asked a great, oh, sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that is that those are ACE is also available under in the Veritext. If you're connected to Veritext, you can find your ACE files there. And if you needed to send a document or group of documents or group of exhibits, easily done through Veritext, they'll send a secure link, and you don't have to worry about is it too large to get to a firewall or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people don't realize that that ACE file is a living, breathing, evolving document. So after each deposition, it will continue to update on its own. It's right there in Veritext. I would tell you to go look at that. You probably have never seen it before, and your lawyers will really like that too. It's a handy, handy document. Somebody mentioned earlier about videography, right? And what's the legality around that? Well, there's kind of controversy around that, but we've always taken the position that simply just recording the Zoom will not be admissible in court. And now we've seen articles written about it. We've seen issues where the videos were denied around the country from others who did that. And it's interesting in North Carolina specifically, there's always kind of been this practice, if you will, especially on the plaintiff side, where the plaintiff's lawyer simply records the video. And I think that they'll still continue to do that at times. But we do recommend an actual videographer to come in and record the proceedings. There's several articles about it. This was one, I think, back in September on Law Technology Today that talks about the importance of using a legal videographer in remote proceedings. You know, again, they're going to maintain control. They're going to record what's intended to be recorded. And they're not simply just using the Zoom record feature. In fact, we don't even have that enabled in our platform because we were concerned that lawyers would just hit it on non-video deposition. So we turned that off very, very early on in COVID. But what the videographer is doing, okay, is they actually have 2 separate devices that are set up. And some even set up their camera as a third backup, which is a little bit, you know, I don't think you need to do that. I think 2 backups is more than enough. And ethically, that's all we need according to the NCRA. But they have 2 computers that are recording. So they'll do their read on, they'll go on and off the record, they'll control the environment, they'll adjust audio mic levels as needed via their sources. And the final product will be as it always was, where you don't capture the entire Zoom, right? You simply capture the actual witness, okay? The videographer, by the rules, in accordance with the rules, also adds the digital timestamp as well. And so your final video product is like it always was. Now, I was a little concerned on what's the quality going to look like on something like that. And as you all know, I mean, we live and die by the internet, and it's going to happen where somebody gets cut off or maybe even a witness. Well, it's okay. These things happen. You just go off the record, you get reconnected, and you continue the deposition. I think all lawyers have kind of realized to have a little bit more what I call grace or patience in this COVID environment. But the final product is as good as it always was in person, which I was pleasantly surprised to see. Now, talking about video clips and video management, because that's always in terms of a support staff, kind of always a hot issue on how do we deal with it. You know, I get calls all the time 3 days before trial. Oh my gosh, we got these designations. What do we do? How do we do it? You know, et cetera. Every video that Veritext produces, at least, is synchronized. And it's also able to be loaded into any trial presentation software. Your large ones out there really are Trial Director. That's what most people in our region have heard of. There's another new one, an up and coming one called OnCue, which I really like. it's very, very robust when it comes to the videos. But all of these products, we are able to actually import our files directly into theirs. What's cool about our product is that you don't have to have Trial Director or OnCue or anything else. It comes with a built-in viewer app that allows you literally to make clips, make highlights, search for words, search for objections. And I always tell people, if you know how to right-click, then you can learn this software, because every function in here is all about right-clicking. So I'll actually open a viewer up here and share that with you. And as you can see here, let me share my audio. If I come to any portion,
being that you haven't had your deposition taken before, let me go over a couple of ground rules with you. And even though this deposition is being recorded by the videographer.
Okay, if I want to search for my objections, because that's what I'm going to be looking for when I'm doing designations, we'll come down here and it'll come to all instances of object or objection. And here we go. There it is. Okay. And again, to make a clip, it's as simple as highlighting, right-clicking, make a clip. Okay, you can even edit this clip down if there's this and take that out and want to start with I think we are ready. We already mentioned it. You certainly can. But again, very user-friendly. So there's a misconception sometimes that, well, why do I need the sync? Why would I, not just get the regular video? And I've been saying this for at least a decade, and this is just because I've done so many trials. But if you don't have the sync, the video is useless. Okay, you can basically, it's like a VHS tape at that point. You can put it in the player and hit play, and it's going to play. But there are not many times that I've ever been in court where there's not some sort of editing that needs to be done in terms of the video, whether it's taking out something, maybe they spoke about insurance inadvertently, need to take that out, got to take the objections out, etc. So synchronized video is certainly the way to go. Tom, did I miss anything there? And I know that was kind of a high level, but
no, I think you're right on. We got a couple of questions. If Christine, you want to read a question or two?
So I had a question about how paralegals can help prep clients who are not used to Zoom and who may be appearing remotely and possibly apart from their attorney. And how can they best prep their attorneys? Do we have any best practices?
Yeah, I think we could both answer that, Tom.
Yeah.
But what's the old saying? Practice makes perfect. Well, honestly, that's a great question. We spend a lot of our day doing that, prepping with lawyers, prepping with witnesses, even, especially when you get into some things that are highly document intensive. But if you're going to take on that role yourself, as opposed to having your court reporting firm do it, I would say just get with them. Make sure you do your own test with whatever technology you're going to use, WebEx, Zoom, GoToMeeting. Some of those have software that they have to download. Ours does not, but some of them do. And just practice. Sometimes people, especially witnesses who are not professional witnesses, aren't even thinking about a webcam. Now, most new laptops have webcams, but they might have an older one. I mean, I've had that happen where the witness shows up and says, well, they get connected, but you can't see them. And that was kind of early on this, but practice makes perfect. Tom, what would you say there?
Yeah, I'd say exactly the thing about practice. And we have several cases that are ongoing that our clients just send us, like, here's the next witness. Can you make sure they're trained? Here's the next witness. And a lot of times we do that jointly with a paralegal or an attorney, because they want to, kind of make sure that they're ready to go. The other thing I'd mention is if it's a witness and if it's like their first time and you're not sure what the background's going to look like, those are the kind of things, make sure when you do that test that they're going to be where they're going to be during the deposition. So are they going to be in front of a window that's got light coming in and all you see is a shadow? Just some of those technical pieces sometimes get overlooked until you're in the deposition and you realize that you can't really see anything. And also, if there's anything you're going to ask them to do, for example, if during the deposition, you're going to say, hey, can you highlight this? Can you circle the spot where you fell? Whatever it is. If there's something using an annotation tool, definitely practice that ahead of time so that they're familiar with how to do that, so it's not really clunky.
Yeah. The background is critical there. I saw some sort of kind of spoof thing on YouTube not long ago. It was a Divine essay video deposition. It was just a little cut of it, but the person's background she had these cats behind her. And so the whole time for this minute, you're not even listening to the testimony because these cats are just going crazy behind her. So little things like that, you know, because they're at home most of the time that you're just not thinking of. Yeah.
And going back to that website that we can share with everyone, it has a whole section on prepping witnesses and what you can do and it gets into things like, you know, what they should wear, what's going to videotape better, that sort of thing. But there's a lot of information on that site that speaks to prepping a witness.
Yeah. Were those all the questions, Christina?
Yes, that was it.
Okay.
Oh wait, we have one more. Hang on. Okay, here's a question. Any thoughts on the topic of audio quality?
You know, I'll go first on that. For the most part, the audio through the computer, especially if you're through a hardwire connection, has been just fine. You know, initially when we used to do remote depositions, we really would link in a phone connection. And I still use that at times with some people. If you've got a kind of a off and on Wi-Fi, I would dial in by phone. And that's the great thing about Zoom. You can dial in over the computer or by phone and you're still connected. So if you get disconnected from the video platform, if you're on the audio over the phone, you're not disconnected from the audio. So you're still hearing what's going on. The deposition doesn't have to stop. You just reconnect to the video and you're good to go. That would be my thoughts there.
Yeah. And going back to testing is helpful. I'm guessing that you may be referring to if you have multiple people in a room, in a conference room that are going to be with the witness, and everybody logs in on their computer. If they all connect to their speaker, to the computer, you get that horrible echo sound, you know. And so those are the types of things that just knowing, if we know that ahead of time, we can make sure that there's a speaker phone in the room. I'm in one of our depot suites right now, and that comes up quite a bit as multiple people try to log on, and I can hear that echo sound. So again, going back to preparation and kind of knowing, you know, how people are going to be configured in the space can help us get ahead of some of those challenges.
Yeah, and one thing our ops team does well is they ask the right questions. And these questions have to be asked at this point because there's such another layer of complexity on this hybrid situation. And it's clear as day. I talk to lawyers every day about it. Where do you see the future going? I love it. You know, unless it's some major critical witness or it's an intimidation thing, they really don't need to be in front of them face to face. They've adapted to the technology and it's never going away. And so now it's just these hybrid scenarios. So we got about 8 minutes left, which is perfect. Last thing I wanted to mention about the Yes Law video synchronized deliverable here is this is the actual presentation mode. So it presents just like Trial Director would, in that I can have the picture of the witness, the headshot of the witness. I can have the scrolling text in the bottom. I can turn that off if I want to as well. But after I create those clips, I literally can present that in court. So big savings on that, and the learning curve is quite simple as opposed to having to learn some of these other softwares and things. So I'll kind of pivot now and talk about the changing landscape in court reporting, because this is certainly going to affect all of us, at least if you're going to be in this industry for another 8 to 10 years. But there's a national shortage on court reporters literally throughout the country. Now, has not hit us as bad here in the Carolinas, but it will. There's just no doubt about it. When you Google court reporting shortage, 22 million instances come up. Okay. And wow. I'll tell you, that's just incredible to me. And it's not surprising. About 2-3 years ago, before COVID, I started getting calls from the local news stations about it, on what our thoughts were with court reporting. Why are hearings being postponed? Why is there such a shortage and things like that? Well, it's real as day and it's here to stay. So again, it's been all throughout the news, and this is kind of not a funny video, but this kind of goes to exactly what we're talking about in terms of local TVs.
There's a crucial aspect of the legal system that's facing shortages across the country right now: court reporters.
We're talking about court reporters, and there is a shortage of them.
The lack of court reporters in the Texas judicial system.
A shortage of court reporters. A shortage of court reporters.
To help relieve the shortage,
the local court reporter shortage. But how about a need for more court reporters?
There's a nationwide shortage of stenographers.
Mississippi has a shortage of
it just goes on
there aren't
and on and on, and it's a big deal. And so, you know, litigation is not going anywhere. The fact that we need a full verbatim record is not going anywhere, right? So how do we solve this problem? So this was actually a report that was done started in 2013, 2014, and I was at this conference out in Arizona. But what it predicted was by 2018 that we were going to have a gap of around 4,000 resources, 4,000 court reporters. I can't remember, Tom, what the average age is, right? Oh, it says it right here. 51 is the average age.
Oh, actually, it's 58 now.
58 is the average age of a court reporter.
Which is young, which is very young.
Very young, very young. Yeah, very young. But again, here, states with the highest demands, and we're seeing this big time in our offices in these locations, was California, Texas, Illinois, and New York. It is crazy in California. Court reporters are swamped, number one, and number two, they have kind of taken a little bit of control in the sense that they pick and choose what jobs they want to take, right? Or they insist on bonuses, or they insist on Uber fees. So a lot of times, you know, if I've got attorneys in North Carolina and they've got a witness that's in California, I say, let's use our local reporter. We'll get a notary to go out there and swear them in. This way, the rates are good. We don't have to worry about these crazy things that are happening out there. What we saw here was students, as you can see, back in 2012 of 5,600, 2018, only 1,200 students. That's nationally, okay? Pass-fail report, 263 people passed their school back in 2015 versus only 124 in 2018. Now, court reporting
that's national. That's national. It's not the Carolinas, yeah.
That's not the Carolinas. That's exactly right. That's the United States across the country. And historically speaking, there's only always typically been around a 13 to 14% pass rate. People go into court reporting think it'll be easy, and it's just not. But that's incredible. 124 is just terrible. So we're seeing all kinds of things published out there. Why is this happening? Where does the industry go from here? As in the courts, a blended court reporting workforce is coming to depositions. Now, you're all familiar in our region. We've got a couple different ways to capture the record. We've got the stenographer, right? But you also have mask reporters, and you see them a lot in court. And that's pretty normal for North and South Carolina. We've had a blended workforce for years, and it's great. The quality is just the same. What you're going to see in the future is what's called digital court reporting.
The goal of any
Now it's the same, okay? Their roles are the same. They're going to swear in the witness, go on and off the record, give the read back as a playback, which the lawyers actually kind of find a little bit funny. And they'll collect and mark exhibits just as they always would. Their technology is similar to a videographer's. They've got a separate track that they're recording for each person. It's coming into a computer, and they're doing shorthand notes as the testimony is happening. This way, if the lawyer says, hey, listen, when we were talking about the contract from 1999 about an hour ago, can you go find that and play that back? They can find it, okay? It's the exact same final deliverable as you're used to. It's a certified transcript. It does have two different certifications, one from the digital reporter and one from the transcriptionist. So the DR person takes down the testimony, the transcriptionist who's elsewhere, then puts all that into the record, takes it down, and you're good to go. Now, one thing that we started kind of talking about, I think at least a year ago, is just, updating your notice language to include by utilizing digital audio recording equipment or other alternative methods of capture. Because of this shortage, this is very real. We have around 6 digital reporters in North Carolina. I believe one of them is here today. And they're great. And there she is. I'm so glad to meet you face to face. I'm so glad to see you.
And you as well. I just want to say we've got another question, and if you don't mind, may I answer as a digital court reporter?
Sure.
So someone is asking about the topic of audio and if Wi-Fi, if things drop, the sound quality, that kind of thing. So your digital court reporter is really the person who's responsible for the audio quality. So when we're in person, I will have each person mic'd with a microphone like you'd see on the news, and I can individually mute you or turn you way up. Our transcriptionist would hate me if I did that, but ultimately I'm the one who's in charge of the audio. And when we're remote, which by the way, I really enjoy remote proceedings. I've been doing it for less than a year, and I've done well over 200 depositions and hearings. And the hearings are in Florida, which is everyone knows Florida special, so that's always fun. But even remotely, I am usually recording in duplicate, if not in triplicate. So really, what you need to make sure is that you're not getting feedback. I'll tell you, and this is one of our prizes for our next trivia, a wired microphone and headset. You'll get the best audio quality. I think with that, other people may have other opinions, but Bluetooth is not a good idea, really. But yeah, you let the court reporter worry about the audio. And just an FYI, even if you're working with a traditional stenographer, they're probably also recording you, if not once, but twice. So
yes,
so thanks
absolutely.
for letting me jump in, you guys.
Sure.
No, I appreciate that. And you're right. I use these headsets for every single Zoom meeting that I have. I don't do Bluetooth, and they're great. And the audio, you guys can hear me well. So thank you for adding to that as an actual DR reporter. So we appreciate it. So at this point, we'll allow, it's right at 10:30. If there's any questions, certainly let us know. We appreciate the opportunity to speak with everybody and be here.
Dave, I want to mention one thing.
I have one more question.
Sure.
If y'all have a second. So with the rise in virtual depositions and delivery of electronic transcripts, how are you handling the original sealed that would normally be used at trial?
So that's a great question. Right now, we still produce the original in South and North Carolina. I will tell you though, throughout the country, they no longer produce the originals unless requested. I would love for our legislature or our judicial branches to kind of do away with that. I think it's old. I think it's outdated. I've had conversations with some judges about it. And frankly, I already have law firms that call and say, look, I don't want the original. We'll call you if we're going to trial and we'll get it then, but I'm sick of storing these originals around. Other people's, it's the opposite. They're used to it. They got to have that original. So in the future, I do see the original going away, some sort of e-filing of the deposition transcript. I think we'll take that over. And certainly that's what they're doing around the country besides North and South Carolina.
One thing I'll say too is that you can have a regular order, whatever it is you usually want, if it's just an E-Tran or whatever. And a lot of the attorneys that are regulars, I guess you would say, they'll just say my usual, like you're at your favorite diner or something back in the day. But so that's something to keep in mind. If your office has a particular type of product you want out of us, just let your Veritext rep know, and they'll put it on your file, and we'll know you just want the usual.
Exactly. And you never have to ask at that point because we already know what you want.